Hey guys, so I wanted to do a video today talking about why I left the classroom after over 10 years of teaching. So I've been a teacher since the 2014-2015 school year, where I entered teaching in a very untraditional way. So I did not get my bachelor's in math education. I was a math teacher, high school math teacher. Um, in the 25-26 school year, and then I quit in November. But I was not a math education major. I wasn't even a math major. I had my math minor, but I was a history major. And I'd always been interested in teaching since I was a little kid, but sort of shied away from finishing my math degree because math classes got really abstract and really difficult for me when I got past the calculus sequence. And I just was not in the right headspace to continue on with that degree because it was really tearing at my confidence. But I always knew that I had a passion um, for mathematics and an interest in mathematics precisely because I was challenged by it. I wasn't as challenged by things like writing. I felt like I was very articulate. I could express myself well in written assignments and things, but mathematics and understanding it and deriving a solution and really um, tackling a hard problem and finally being able to explain it to someone was something that I really couldn't replicate in any other subject area. So I eventually, after getting my history degree, I decided to go back to school in order to do a transition to teaching program where essentially I would have to take a few more math classes, which ended up benefiting me in the long run, but I'll talk more about that later. So I ended up doing a few more math classes and I took my praxis exam, passed that, and I was able to first, I was a paraeducator for math department, and then once I landed a teaching job, I was a first year teacher and then finishing some coursework in this transition to teaching program. And I eventually got my Master of Arts in teaching. And since that first year, which was a very difficult, tough year, I've been teaching ever since, and I just quit, like I said. So let's kind of rewind and go back to my first year of teaching. My first year of teaching was really, really hard. It was hard because I was still in school. It was difficult because I was young. I think I was 25 years old, which is older than a lot of people who just go into the classroom straight away from their undergrad. But I was still perceived as really young. I looked really young, and my students took advantage of that. And in the middle of my first year of teaching, I wanted to quit. I was in my mentor's office, and my mentor was an English teacher. She wasn't even a math teacher. And I told her point blank that I wanted to quit. I felt like my classroom management was trash. I felt like students did not respect me at all, and I just wasn't connecting with them, even though I tried really hard to do that. And I wanted to quit. But she told me to stick it out. And if I still felt the same way my second year of teaching, then that's when it's okay to quit. She would support whatever decision I made, but she also knows that in her mentorship, that most teachers struggle that first year, and I was no exception. I struggled. My second year was a lot better. I felt like I was kind of getting a hang of things. I still wasn't a great educator, but I tried. I really did. It was also really hard because my first year, especially, I was teaching three preps, which, if you don't know what that means, that's basically three different classes. So I was teaching geometry, financial literacy, and algebra 2. And my literacy class in particular was really, really tough. They were a tough group of students who were seniors. And so when I was new to the school, they didn't really want to follow my directions at all, and said some pretty harsh things. I remember having some parent meetings with the principal present where a parent just called me the B word because his daughter wasn't passing my class, even though that was her fault. And I think at that point, I sort of thought, well, I think this is just how it is in education. And for some reason, I was okay with that because I felt like everybody was being disrespected, and you just kind of got through it and you moved on. And once you became a more seasoned teacher and your classroom management was more effective, then these things wouldn't be happening to me. And that's what I thought. So my second year was a lot better. My classroom management was a lot better. I was still struggling here and there, but I got my master's degree and I felt like I was making stronger connections with students, that I was becoming more and more proud of the work that I was doing, and finally making, you know, being able to walk out of my classroom every day knowing that I was making somewhat of a difference to those students who tried. And that was important to me. I still had a lot of issues with administration. I had a lot of issues with parents and with students, unmotivated students. But at that time, in the 2015, 2016, it was not what it is today. And I'll go into that later on. So I taught in my first school for 2 years, and then I moved across the country to California, and I taught 2 years there, which that was a crazy story. I wasn't even supposed to get that job because the department chair, she didn't really like me in the interview, which I don't really know why, but she made it clear that I was the second choice, which I can't believe that she said that to me, but the principal really liked me. The principal really liked my vibe, but she made sure that I was stuck just teaching Algebra 1 and Remedial Algebra 1, which I did not want to do. I wanted to teach calculus. That was my goal. I wanted to be a calculus teacher because I was inspired by my own calculus teacher. So I taught my first year there in Southern California, and honestly, I had very large class sizes. I was teaching freshmen, which was very tough at the time, and still having parent concerns, still feeling really overwhelmed and overworked just by the nature of teaching. I mean, teaching is not just like walking into a classroom and teaching the content. And I get really frustrated with people who think that teachers have it so easy, that we have all these breaks, like summer break and spring break. Those things are nice. And I'm willing to acknowledge that, yeah, teachers do have that. But at the same time, what other job has to walk out the door and then take their work home? I was lesson planning at night. If you were teaching a new prep, you were lesson planning all the time. You couldn't just recycle things. And even if you could, curriculum's always changing. There's always some new pedagogical structure in education that constantly meant that teachers were changing and adapting every year. So it wasn't just as simple as recycling materials. And so you would do that. You would do grading on the weekends because a lot of schools try to place an arbitrary deadline on teachers where, you know, teachers need to aim to get tests back and essays back within a week, which is a lot. Like I was teaching so many students and my sections were huge. My sections in California, I had 38 students at one point. So if you take that amount in the mid 30s to upper 30s and you multiply it by the class periods per day, that's a lot of students to be teaching. And that's a lot of papers and tests and essays and things to be grading. And I was a math teacher and I felt, just grading that amount of tests, it was a lot. And it was a lot of weekend work and it was a lot of late night work as well. So I did that for a couple years, but I felt like I wanted more. I wanted to do more. I wanted to reach more. And I just, as someone who struggled in mathematics my entire life, I wanted to inspire students. And I just felt like teaching freshmen, I could only do so much with that, but I wanted to specifically inspire students to take calculus and be successful in calculus. So, with that in mind, I met my now husband and I moved abroad and I taught at two different international schools. I taught mathematics at an international school in China, and I taught mathematics at an international school in Japan. And that world was completely not like anything else I'd encountered. First of all, I was teaching IB, and the IB curriculum was very intense. So if you know anything about the IB program, the MYP program, and the IB diploma program, it is very intense. The good thing that I got out of that was that I was starting to teach trigonometry and pre-calculus and calculus and subject areas that I've always wanted to teach. But the thing that came with that was a lot of work, even more than I had encountered in the States, especially because I was teaching in small private schools. So I was doing that. And at the same time, I was volunteering for committees. I was leading presentations for professional development. I was grading essays because in the diploma program, math students have to submit an essay for each of their subject areas in the diploma program. And I was just in a work culture and surrounded by people who worked all the time. I mean, working late into the night, and the expectation was not only are you doing that, but you're committing to weekends, you're committing to field trips, and it was just a lot on my system. And when COVID hit, I couldn't do it anymore. I just felt like even in Japan, where I'm supposed to like enjoy the country and it's like a lot of people's dreams to visit and it's a beautiful place, I was starting to really hate my work. And I got diagnosed with a pretty severe stress disorder at that time. And my doctor said I really needed to leave the country because it wasn't worth it. My job was really sucking the life out of me because I was committing so much. I wasn't just satisfied with like giving my students whatever. I was developing curriculum. I was helping lead my school through accreditation. Um, and at the same time, trying to bond with students and have fun in my classroom. So, long story short, I went back to the States and I landed in Texas in a really good school district there. And I started teaching calculus a few years in. And that was amazing. That was an amazing experience for me. I loved teaching calculus. It was so hard, but I worked. I worked every problem I assigned to my students. I had really great results on the AP exam, and I worked my butt off. I started becoming team lead for AP Pre-Calculus when that happened. And I just felt like at that time, in comparison to the 2014, 2015 school year when I first started teaching, I felt like I was an amazing teacher because I put in the work. And, I, at the same time, I was pouring so much of myself into the job in order to be an amazing teacher. So I was nominated for Teacher of the Year. I got Teacher of the Month a few times. And I felt like the better I was at my job, the more responsibility I had to lead teams and to do curriculum development on top of my teaching. And at a certain point, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I had an AP Calculus class of almost 40 students, and that was so difficult. I was tripping over students' backpacks in the classroom, and it was just so much grading and so much work every single day. And I had a breakdown. I had a mental breakdown, and I ended up going to therapy for a year and started really reevaluating my stress at that point. So I was like, okay, what do I do now? So the year after therapy, this is going to be my third year teaching calculus. I went ahead and stayed in the classroom because I knew that I needed to be the team lead for AP Pre-Calculus, which was a new class. And so I led a team of teachers through the course. Our students were really successful on the AP exam. I had a 100% pass rate. Every single one of my students got a 4 or 5, and I was super proud of that. But I still felt like the industry in and of itself was changing, and it really was. So I'm going to go ahead and end part one here, but this is kind of what I want to talk about as far as like a rationale for why I left. I miss my students every single day. And I want to say before I go into part two that I never left because of my students. My students are incredible. Young people are incredible. And I know that Gen Z and Gen Alpha get a lot of flack from the older generations, but there really are amazing young people in the world. And I was so privileged to be able to make an impact on their life. So I will see you for part two.